So what are we going to talk about? Synthetic tracking is what we're going to talk about. It's a passive image processing technique that detects faint, fast-moving objects and space imagery through blind searches of the night sky. So APL's successfully ported this algorithm to some GPU hardware that's suitable for spaceflight, and that's going to allow some real-time autonomous object detection in space. So we're going to demonstrate how it works using some real imagery, show how we can find objects that are invisible, and then we'll talk through some technical details, image processing pipeline, architecture choices, and talk about some performance results. So if everyone can take a look, do you see a spacecraft in this image anywhere? It's in this red box. It's actually in that blue circle, but I'm sorry, it's a trick question. You can't actually see it in this image. The spacecraft is streaking through this image and it's getting lost in background noise, but we can see it if we use this image processing technique called shift and add. So here on the left is going to be sort of our long exposure where all of our stars are stationary. If we take a stack of images and put them on top of each other and shift them pixel by pixel and then realign them and stack them, we're actually able to find something through the noise floor. So we're beating our signal to noise ratio and we're actually able to find an object. That there is Chang'e 5. It's the Chinese spacecraft that's returned samples from the moon. Invisible on the left and visible on the right. That's great. So some of our motivations here is we want to have a passive blind search of the night sky for unknown objects. So this synthetic tracking algorithm was designed to scan the night sky for unknown near-Earth objects where telescopes would not have object rate information to be able to track while collecting. So it's kind of an important point here is that you would need to know the trajectory of the object to be able to take pictures of it, where we could instead just take images and then sort through them later and try and find those objects. So like I'm mentioning, we take a stack of images and then this is a pipeline. So we need to pre-process the image. We're going to estimate our background, remove bright objects, remove faint stars, and we're going to take that and then we're going to take a set of vectors. And for each of these vectors, we're going to apply shift and add to the image stack. And then once that's done, we're going to search each of those summarized images with an expected point spread function. That's sort of like a template matching algorithm if you're familiar. So this is an example image of after our pre-processing. So we've estimated the background, removed our bright objects, and removed our stars. You can see there's sort of halos around things, but it's looking a lot better. And here's just a visualization of a set of vectors that we're going to try. So if you wanted to go from negative 1.5 in both x and y all the way to positive 1.5 x and y, those are the number of pixels that you're going to shift for each vector. So here's a quick example here. I wish we had a laser pointer, but top left is our shift from x in negative 1.2 and y in negative 1.2. We can see that the stars are faint stars, even though they've been removed. We've got a lot of streaking. Our solution is the top middle box at negative 1.2 and negative 0.6. You can see very faintly there's a bright white object that does not appear to be streaking. Similarly, I mean, if you look anywhere else, you can see sort of the vectors that have been applied here as we've shifted and added each image, and you're getting this sort of streaking phenomenon. You've got 0 and 0 in the middle right of, sort of our pre-processing that's creeping back in with some stars visible. So there we go. There's our Chang'e spacecraft that sort of appeared from nothing, which is great. After this, what we need to do is search each of these summed images with an expected point spread function. So our point spread function sort of looks like a blurred star, and it's a template matching algorithm. You're going to take that point spread function and shift it across the entire image, and that gives us this correlation surface. A brighter pixel here is indicating a higher correlation, meaning we've matched our expected, our search template. And if we visualize that with some color, so we're not staring at black and white images, if you take each of our vectors that we've searched through and plot them in a graph like this, a higher correlation means that we found a good match at some point in the image. So since our pre-processing is not perfect, you sort of see this blip of color in the middle, but we really see that we've got a really good correlation at our solution, which is -0.6, -1.2. So now we get to talk about stuff because we're at the flight software workshop. So we've got our regular flexibility, ease of use, performance, power, efficiency trade-offs between a CPU, GPU, FPGA, ASIC, but I think there's a bit of technology that's been developed that can sort of push GPUs up on that flexibility and ease of use. That's sort of what we've been exploring. So our hardware that we've been using is a Udu Bolt single board computer. It's running Ubuntu. It's got an AMD Ryzen embedded CPU and an AMD Radeon Vega GPU. That's sort of a mobile GPU. We've configured it with PXE network boot for easy deployment, and this Udu Bolt's a low-cost stand-in for the Unibap iX10. That is a radiation-tolerant single-board computer, and that runs Space Cloud, which is a custom Ubuntu OS. Notably here, the AMD Ryzen processors utilize unified memory architecture, not the most efficient thing in the world to have your GPU sharing system RAM instead of having dedicated VRAM, but it's going to be lower power. And it does improve efficiency a little bit by eliminating data copy between our CPU and GPU. So let's talk about our architecture overview. At the bottom here, we've got our Udu Bolt with our AMD Radeon GPU. On top of that, we're using Vulkan. That's just our high-performance compute API. And then the important part here is our Vulkan C++ SDK is our cross-platform tool set, and that's providing development tools so that we can use our compute API on any platform. We're not going to be stuck just on AMD for now. Stacking on top of that is compute. So I haven't mentioned this yet, but previously, some other coworkers and colleagues at APL have taken a paper establishing the synthetic tracking algorithm and had implemented it and done some testing in Python. So this compute layer that we're adding here, this framework, comes with our Python bindings, and that really allowed us to do the minimum amount of effort to try and put this on something space grade. Simplified our GPU programming and allowed us to do a lot less code rewriting. We looked into some other alternative frameworks and software stacks. So this was the best choice for our specific demonstration, but it might not be a one-size-fits-all approach. Like I said, the algorithm was developed in Python, and we were trying to find the simplest and fastest path to convert and demonstrate real-time synthetic tracking on our GPU. And we wanted cross-platform capability if any of our architecture changes. So we compared just using Vulkan C++ and PyOpenCL and compute. Some things didn't have support for our mobile GPU, but compute's optimized to work in these mobile environments. There's some limitations. It currently only supports passing data in as a one-dimensional array, which isn't the most fun thing to work with when you're dealing with images, but it's not terrible. Just a brief set of GPU terminology. There's OpenGL shading language, GLSL. That is your high-level C-based programming language that's used to create custom shaders to run on our GPU. So we're actually taking our template matching that was previously implemented in CV2, and we're taking our synthetic tracking algorithm, our shift and add, and we're taking those individual pieces, and those have to be rewritten in GLSL. That's where we're converting, we've identified the parallelizable parts of synthetic tracking and put those in GLSL. That's going to compile into SPIR-V, standard portable intermediate representation. So if you looked at our software from Python, we're going to pre-process the images. We're going to convert and stack those images into our input tensor. And then for each of the vectors that we want to search, we're going to start a computation on the GPU, shift and add, run template matching, and then wait for our output. So here's some performance results. These are a little misleading. I'm not trying to goose our numbers here, but I wanted to, really highlight the fact that when you're offloading processing from the CPU onto a GPU, you're freeing up CPU resources. So here on the left, you've got your CPU total time. That's a start and stop of entering a function executing on the CPU. And we ran this through on single core, dual core, 4 cores, and 8 cores. We didn't do anything fancy. It's just plain Python multiprocessing. Weren't really trying to optimize it here. Just wanted to show, your average function execution time actually goes up as you're splitting work across cores, and your total function execution time is going up as you're splitting across cores. On the right, we've got our wall clock time, trying to highlight the benefit of the GPU and sort of give you an idea of how that's comparing to, flat out running on a CPU. So a little more detail on comparing the two algorithms. There's a minimum overhead for executing on the GPU here, and it's currently, we're still looking into it, but it's currently looking like 100 milliseconds minimum. So template matching algorithms, pretty straightforward. It's a very small image. You shift it across the summarized image. It's pretty quick, and CV2 on a single core CPU can do that in about 48 milliseconds, and the GPU's double. When we look at the shift and add algorithm, taking 20 1K images, it's 1K resolution, and running that on a single core CPU is about 840 milliseconds, where we're 106 milliseconds on the GPU. So a minimal increase in execution time on the GPU for an increased workload. And the GPU is advantageous, but not in every situation. So there's some complexities of doing this GPU development. These integrated GPUs and embedded GPUs are not really the primary focus of most GPU development. They receive a lot less support. We wanted to use PyTorch, but support had been abandoned for our GPU. There's a lot of interdependencies between the OS, the GPU API, the Vulkan SDK, and the compute API. And there's some quirks too. When a shader has an error, you have to power cycle the board. You can't Control-C a spinning GPU, but you can use a networked power supply, which gets you close. There's also limited debugging options for shader code. Sometimes when I'm having a problem with it, it feels like I've got a microcontroller with one LED that blinks. It's really not the suite of tools I want. So we've had to build our own debug stack. Some of our accomplishments, we've set up our deployment in Ansible. We demonstrated Hello World and multiple frameworks. We've ported the shift and add algorithm and the template matching to the GPU, and we've started collecting performance metrics. We have yet to combine everything together and do a lot of optimization. This is an internal research problem I've been working on, and we only get a couple hours a week to work on this, so we're making progress. Some immediate and future potential. Offloading processing to the GPU does more than provide faster execution time. It's freeing up our capability to do other mission critical and concurrent data processing. With the ability to perform this on the iX10 GPU, it's feasible to deploy these algorithms to spacecraft while maintaining relevant execution times. And this demonstration is basically going to open us up to more development of other parallelizable algorithms to be offloaded on a GPU, automatic crater detection, or deep learning models. So we plan to further integrate into our APL software suite and perform additional testing. Just a special thanks to my small team. It's Isaiah Garrett, David Adele, and Ike Whitty. Just wanted to thank them. So if anyone has any questions, I kept it pretty short. Try and get to lunch.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Any questions? Go ahead, Chris.
What made you choose Unibap and Ryzen versus NVIDIA? Did you do a hardware trade first, or how'd that look?
We had some Unibap boards that we could use, so that's basically, it was no decision, just took what we've got.
That's a great reason.
A question online. Can you give a quick explanation of why the shift and add works for detecting non-background objects?
Not really. I mean, maybe my explanation wasn't clear, but it seems that when you're taking a series of images where stars are not moving, those stars are bright. You might have camera issues with, trying to keep everything from blowing out, and stacking them together is a way of trying to eliminate noise while bringing the signal forward. But if you don't know your object's rate information, you can't get that without doing the shift and add. Other than that, I can take that question and hand it over to the people who did the initial implementation of this algorithm and, are the computer vision people.
Sweet. Thanks, Kevin. Go ahead.
Thanks. Hey, thanks for the talk. That's awesome. When you had a slide that was like the middle of the pipeline, and you mentioned choosing, you mentioned choosing one of these. Was that something the algorithm did, or this was like human review? You were like, oh yeah, this value looks good. This is.
Oh, you're saying in finding our solution?
Yeah, like you mentioned picking the XY values.
Yeah, this initial concept of the synthetic tracking algorithm came from a paper. I'm flanking on the initial person who wrote the paper. And they provided a set of test data knowing where this solution was and gave us a stack of whatever it was, 60 images that we can go through. The spacecraft actually is on one side of the star, behind the star, and then comes out the other side. So it gives us 3 sets of actually being able to locate it, but the solution was provided to us, so we knew where to look.
Cool. I think that's all the questions we have. If there's anything else, please put it in the Slack. So thank you so much, Kevin.
Thanks.